Martin Coddington's. Now that's a good movie.
Hi, welcome back to our show. Today we're talking about Peter Brooks's King Lear, made in 1971, I believe, starring Paul Scofield. King Lear is probably my favorite Shakespeare play. I've seen very few film adaptations. In fact, I think the only other one I've seen is Ran, Akira Kurosawa's adaptation of it, which if you haven't seen, you should see. It's phenomenal. But we're talking about Peter Brooks's. This one is interesting because the way that they tell the story, it's very unsympathetic towards King Lear. It's filmed in black and white, very stark black and white. Lots of low lighting, heavy shadows. And it's filmed in these like extreme close-ups. And we kind of like get to slowly watch King Lear like descend into madness through these very intimate like close-ups. And it's like hard to describe. It's even like when he's monologuing, there's like the scene in the storm, he like delivers from his like back and like just laying in the mud and like rain just pouring on him, and it's you feel very heavy throughout the whole film, because I mean, if you don't know the story, he's kind of like dug his own grave in a sense. He split up his kingdom between his daughters, and one of the daughters who doesn't praise him as much as he thinks he deserves, or isn't idolizes him, I think would be the correct term. She doesn't idolize him as like some great being, and so he like banishes her from the kingdom and splits his kingdom between the other two daughters who like are willing to like stroke his ego essentially. And throughout the story, we find out that like it's kind of this false praise, and it's like fake posturing. Whereas like the daughter he banished, loved him like a father and didn't like think of him as like a god basically. And so like he slowly realizes that like his ego has gotten in his own way of like being happy and like and understanding what real love is, and like what his two eldest daughters have given him is essentially like false. And so like he's realized too late, obviously, and he's banished to like walk around this kingdom that he no longer has any control over. The way that Peter Brooks has even edited the film is incredible. He uses like these machine gun edits and like seems to be like hacking up the film like with a blunted machete. I mean like a lot of it's really jarring, and I mean like to great effect, because like we're just watching Paul Scofield, just like his character being obliterated in front of us. They even opted for the more tragic ending of King Lear. There's like two different endings to the story, and they opted for the more tragic ending, which is, I mean, I think is the better way to go. A lot of people like to romanticize King Lear as like being mistreated, or like fate has like been working against him or something. But like I think that it's a much better story if we look at it where King Lear has essentially like done this to himself, where he thinks too highly of himself, and like now the world is finally like knocking him down a peg. And I think it's a better story to like learn from this, that like, you know, we should probably all not take ourselves so seriously. Some of the scenes are a little dated. As far as I can tell, like I didn't look up any numbers, but it seems to be a low budget affair. A lot of like costumes are reused. There's not really any big extravagant sets. In fact, most of the time when we get like a wide shot at all in the film, it's just like barren landscape, just to show how alone these characters are. Also on like the way he shot the close-ups, he has a lot of, it's filmed in 1:33:1 aspect ratio, and the way he's filmed a lot of like the dialogue when like characters are talking to each other, he like has their profiles like perfectly on either side of the map or frame, and even as like some characters are like overpowering the other in the dialogue, he like slowly pushes one in towards the other and like boxes the other one out of the frame. So he's used like, I feel like he used a lot of like the tools of filmmaking to benefit, whereas like a lot of Shakespeare adaptations tend to like approach it with a more like theater mindset, where the camera is like strictly trying to capture the performances rather than like being kind of its own character or own like force of nature in the film. But Peter Brooks did a good job of like using editing tools, or like even the way he's like filmed or framed the composition of the shots to like better the storytelling. Another interesting thing was a complete lack of soundtrack or score to the film, which I think helped add to the like barrenness or like almost like absolute depression to like the scenery and the story, because like there's no escaping watching like these characters like just become like more and more like lost. Like I honestly can't even think of one time there was music in the movie, but you know, maybe on a second viewing, I'll go back and I'll realize that there is a score, but right now I can't even remember any music in it. Even the opening shot of the movie is panning across the court as he's like waiting for or as they're waiting for him to like make a ruling about who's going to like take over the kingdom. And it's just, I mean, it's just faces and like heads in a crowd and like total silence. Like there's no like ambient noise of a crowd. There's no music, nothing. We're simply waiting for King Lear to speak and rule. So that was Peter Brooks's King Lear. I don't have a copy to hold up for you. I watched it actually free on YouTube. So I think we'll leave a link to that in the description. And I recommend watching it because it's phenomenal. Thanks for joining us again. And, we'll see you next time.